husband of 35 years, on his deathbed, held my hand with a face full of resentment. Why didn't you give the college admission spot to Kate back then? If you had given in to her, she wouldn't have been violated. Tears streamed from the corners of his eyes. Iris Lynn, after I die, bury me with Kate. In this life, I couldn't be Kate's husband, but in the next, I will make it up to her. I cried and cried, then laughed. Do you really love her that much? Tears streamed down Miles's face. Yes. So much. If there is an afterlife, I want us to be together as lovers destined to marry. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn. In this life, I will definitely help him fulfill his wish. Otherwise, it would be a disservice to my aggrieved past life. Iris Lynn, give your university recommendation spot to Kate. Consider it a favor for her saving my life. We're already engaged. What's the point of you going to university anyway? When I opened my eyes again, Miles was clutching my hand. Pleading, sweating from both the heat and anxiety. His forehead was drenched, beads of sweat clung to the strands of hair on his forehead, making him look even more handsome. For Kate, Miles blocked my path in the sweltering 35-degree weather, for the educated youth girl he fancied. He humbled himself and swallowed his pride. In my previous life, I firmly rejected his request. Why should the recommendation spot be given to her? I earned it through my own efforts. Besides, it was you whom Kate saved, not me. Why should I be the one to make the sacrifice? Because of these words, Miles hated me for a lifetime. Kate was an educated youth sent down to the production brigade, tall and beautiful. She usually liked to wear tight-fitting clothes that accentuated her curves. The young men in the production brigade couldn't take their eyes off Kate, practically drooling over her. However, Kate was quite aloof among the younger generation. She showed no kindness to anyone except Miles. Once, the production team organized a tree-felling trip up the mountain. Suddenly, the wind picked up. The fallen tree came crashing down towards Miles, and in that life-or-death moment, Kate pushed him out of the way. After this incident, the bond between the two grew even stronger. In my previous life, after rejecting Miles' request, I went off to university. Kate had no choice but to continue laboring in the production team. Miles couldn't bear to see Kate suffer in the countryside, so he went to his uncle. His uncle was the brigade secretary, responsible for approving the quotas for educated youth returning to the city. Miles went to great lengths for Kate. After much effort, he managed to secure a return quota for Kate. The day before returning to the city, Kate thanked Miles by inviting him to watch an open-air movie in the neighboring village. Unexpectedly, on their way back, Kate was dragged into a sorghum field by a group of thugs and violated. Miles was also knocked unconscious and injured. Kate suffered a mental breakdown and lost her ability to bear children. I graduated from university and married Miles. Before attending university, I was a barefoot doctor in the village. Due to my outstanding performance, I was recommended as a worker peasant soldier university student. During university, I also majored in medicine. After graduation, I joined the local health bureau. After marriage, I used my connections to transfer Miles to the agricultural station in the commune as its director. Later, I also helped him attend night school to improve his education and transferred him to the city's agricultural bureau. By the time Miles was about to retire, he had already become the director of the agricultural bureau. We bought a house and settled down in the city. After moving to the city, Miles reconnected with Kate. After Kate got married, she was abused by her husband because she couldn't bear children. Feeling sorry for her, Miles secretly arranged for Kate to work at the agricultural bureau where he was employed. In my previous life, I always thought that Miles sympathized with Kate's plight and felt compassion for her. Thus, I also held a forgiving heart towards Miles. Just a few days after Kate's death, Miles also fell ill. The resentment Miles harbored on his deathbed made me realize completely that it wasn't just sympathy he felt for Kate. He loved her. From beginning to end, I've been nothing but a colossal joke. I deeply regret helping Miles secure a job. I regret even more assisting him in advancing his education, step by step paving his way into officialdom. I rue the day I taught my husband to seek a marquisate. After gaining power, he would often stay away from home for days, always using work as an excuse. In reality, he was with Kate, indulging in passion at their love nest. Fine, in this lifetime, I'll let them have their way. Iris Lynn, please, give your university admission spot to Kate. Seeing my prolonged silence, Miles Lee couldn't hide his anxiety. He kept shaking my hand, pleading repeatedly, she's a city girl, too delicate. Life in the countryside won't be easy for her, just think of it as doing a good deed, help her, okay. I broke free from his grasp. He said Kate was delicate, but I'm clearly even thinner than Kate. In a scoundrel's eyes, everyone appears weak, whoever he pities, that person becomes delicate. I thought for a moment and said, I can give up my university spot for her, but I have a condition. A spark of light flashed in Miles Lee's eyes. It was the kind of excitement and joy that comes from getting exactly what one desires. Iris Lynn, what are your conditions, to prevent him from suspecting that I had been reborn? I deliberately paused for a moment, putting on a thoughtful expression. I finally said, your uncle is the brigade secretary, right? I want 2 letters of introduction, blank ones, stamped with the brigade's official seal. Miles Lee immediately became alert. Iris Lynn, what are you doing? You're not using the letter of introduction for something bad, are you? I put on a stern face. What bad thing could I possibly do? I'm the barefoot doctor in the village, and a party member. Do you think I'm as unenlightened as you? Miles Lee flushed red. He knew exactly what I was talking about. Miles Lee was the veterinary doctor in the brigade, responsible for the health and safety of all livestock in the brigade. He was a man who couldn't live without meat. In the 1970s, with limited living standards, he began to entertain dishonest thoughts. To satisfy his craving for meat, he deliberately suffocated newborn lambs during deliveries and then took the dead lambs home to cook and eat. After I caught him, he begged me not to tell anyone, otherwise, he would lose his position as a veterinarian. I had leverage over him, so he had no choice but to agree. Don't worry, I'll definitely help you get it. Once you bring me the letter of introduction, I'll give the spot to Kate. In my previous life, it wasn't until Miles Lee was on his deathbed that I realized I'd been a clown all along. In this lifetime, I won't harbor any hopes of marrying him again. He's selfish, narrow-minded, lacking vision, and what's worse, a womanizer. In my past life, I was blind, mistaking a piece of pig dung for a gold nugget. Rather than becoming resentful partners in the future, it's better to make a clean break now. It is now the year 1976. The only way to attend university was through recommendations from the brigade and commune, known as worker peasant soldier students. In my previous life, during my second year of university, which was in 1977, the National College Entrance Examination System was reinstated. In the first year of the reinstated college entrance examination, both Kate and Miles Lee took part, but neither made the cut. With memories from my past life, in this life, I voluntarily gave the worker peasant soldier university student quota to Kate. Since Miles Lee likes Kate so much, I must make sure they end up together. Do they think they can be happy without me standing in their way? Dream on, I'll grab a stool and wait to see them make fools of themselves. After Kate got the recommendation spot, she's been showing off everywhere. My parents also heard from the neighbors that I had given up the recommendation spot. My mother pinched my arm hard and cried loudly, "Stubborn girl, are you stupid? That was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If you hadn't performed so well, it wouldn't have been your turn in the first place." My father smoked his pipe, head lowered, and said nothing. He tapped the tobacco pipe against the edge of the can a few times and cursed, "Miles Lee is really no good, actually using the marriage to threaten you. Girl, if you feel uneasy in your heart, I'll find a matchmaker and call off the engagement." I held my father's hand and smiled to comfort them. Breaking off the engagement isn't happening now, Mom, Dad. The humiliation Miles Lee brought upon us, I'll soon make him pay for it. Just wait and see, there'll be quite a show. Seeing how optimistic I was, my parents felt relieved. The news that Kate had become a worker peasant soldier college student spread quickly. For a time, she was the center of attention. Even more men coveted her. Yet she became increasingly aloof, associating only with Miles Lee. Miles Lee also forgot about the fact that he had a fiancée and became increasingly boundaryless in his interactions with her. Gradually, rumors began to spread. I bought some study materials from the city and started preparing for the college entrance exam the following year. In my previous life, the worker peasant soldier students recommended by the commune had no choice in which school they could attend. If I take the college entrance exam next year, I can choose the school I like based on my abilities. I'm secretly reviewing my courses here, preparing for the exam. Miles Lee and Kate, you are so close they're practically attached at the hip. My dad was building a cattle pen in the production team and saw Miles Lee pulling Kate into the warehouse with his own eyes. After returning, my father fell ill from anger. I comforted my father, telling him to stay calm. Those who act in haste die quickly. We'll just wait and watch their downfall. Another time, Miles Lee and Kate went hand in hand to the commune to watch an opera, and I happened to run into them. Miles Lee said guiltily that he just happened to run into Kate and told me not to overthink it. I couldn't be bothered to listen to his excuses and turned away to leave. The next day, Miles Lee bought me a jar of vanishing cream and brought it over. Iris Lynn. I got this for you specially when I went to the county town for a meeting. The salesperson said this fragrance is the most popular among girls. I opened the lid, only half of the cream remained, as if the other half had been scooped out by someone. No need to guess, it must have been leftover from Kate. I don't care for it. Miles Lee threw it down and ran away. I turned around and took it back to Miles Lee's mother. Miles Lee's parents must have heard a lot about their son. They sent a matchmaker to our house, saying they wanted to arrange our wedding before the Lunar New Year. My parents said they would think it over. Our hesitation made the Lee family parents uneasy. They scolded Miles Lee, and he quieted down for a few days. Young love is like dry wood meeting a fierce fire. Once ignited, it's hard to extinguish. I treated the villagers. On my way back, I happened to see Miles Lee and Kate engaging in an intimate act in the small grove at the edge of the village. Clothes were scattered everywhere, and the two pale figures were writhing on the ground in a tangled mess. I coughed loudly, startling them so much that they immediately went limp. Kate pushed Miles Lee away, picked up her clothes to cover her face, and ran off. Miles Lee's eyes were dazed, still lost in the moment. When he realized it was me, he snapped back to reality instantly. Iris Lynn. Just now, I was having a dream. His eyes darted around, and he stammered, tonight. I went to Team 6 to inseminate the mare. The production team leader made me dinner. I had a few sips of liquor, and then I fell asleep on the way back. Somehow, I ended up here. Miles Lee's face grew even thicker with each lie that effortlessly rolled off his tongue. I couldn't be bothered to listen to his excuses and teased him with a half-smile. Artificial insemination for horses. As long as it's not for humans. Taking advantage of my good nature, he kept pushing my buttons repeatedly. Even the most patient person would run out of tolerance. This is absolutely intolerable. Miles Lee hastily put on his clothes and tried to help me carry the medical kit. I dodged him and swung the kit hard at his head. Caught completely off guard, he collapsed to the ground instantly. In an instant, his head was bleeding profusely, and he fell unconscious. I yanked off his pants, tore open his shirt, exposing the hickeys on his neck and the scratch marks on his chest, grabbing the first aid kit. I ran home. As I ran, I screamed, "Someone come quick! Miles Lee has passed out in the small woods at the edge of the village." That day, the woods were bustling with activity. Miles Lee became the monkey in the zoo, surrounded by curious neighbors. Knowing he was in the wrong, he dared not make a sound. He just said he drank too much, took a fall, and then passed out. Miles Lee's head was split open with a deep gash, and it took him over 10 days to recover before he could go out and see people. On his first day out, he came to my house to make a scene. "Iris Lynn, I never expected you to be so vicious. You even dare to hit your own husband. Did you really have to call the whole village to come laugh at me? Isn't this just your way of forcing me to set a wedding date with you? Well, I refuse to give you what you want. I'm telling my parents. I'm calling off the engagement with you. A shrew like you, I wouldn't dare marry. Iris Lynn, I curse you. May you never marry in your lifetime. Even if you do marry, may your husband beat you 3 times a day. Better yet, beat you to death." I crossed my legs casually and retorted, "Go ahead, bring it up with your parents. I'll be waiting. Whoever doesn't call off the engagement is a coward." The Lee family parents are reasonable people. They had heard rumors from the neighbors. Adding to that was the disgraceful behavior of Miles Lee in the grove that day. No matter how much his parents shielded their son, they could guess what had happened. Not only did they not come to break off the engagement, but they also invited our whole family to visit. The Lee family was eager to set the wedding date for me and Miles Lee, taking advantage of Mr. Lee's birthday. They even prepared a lavish feast. My parents harbored some resentment towards the Lee family, but unable to resist my pleading, they still went. dinner was ready, but Miles Lee hadn't returned home yet. I went to the production team to look for him, but didn't find Miles Lee. Instead, I ran into Kate. Kate was carrying an aluminum lunchbox and a net bag full of apples. When she saw me, she raised an eyebrow and smiled. Dr. Lynn, Miles told me you two were discussing the wedding date today. What a coincidence. There's a cow in the production team about to give birth, and Miles has to stay up all night. Seeing that I didn't respond, Kate waved the lunchbox in her hand. I cooked for Miles and kept vigil with him. This apple is really sweet. I had someone specially buy it for Miles. Iris Lynn, have you ever bought anything for Miles? I sneered mockingly. I'll buy it, for someone who deserves it. I disdainfully poked at the apples in her net bag. Are these apples clean? I smell something fishy. Did you trade something else for them? Kate's expression changed, and she snatched the net bag before walking away. In my previous life, I held no resentment toward Kate. In fact, I even sympathized with her unfortunate circumstances. It wasn't until later, when Miles Lee became the director and kept a mistress in a golden cage, that I realized Kate wasn't innocent either. Flies don't land on an uncracked egg. Neither of them was a good person. Turns out, Kate's pretentious air of aloofness was all an act. She only clings to those who are useful to her. In order to secure a spot to return to the city, she once offered herself to Miles Lee's uncle. At that time, I was surprised to see the two of them emerging from the sorghum field. Miles Lee's uncle was the brigade secretary, and Miles Lee was the secretary's nephew. Both were people who could help her. Now, many people in the brigade know about Kate's questionable lifestyle. Only that clueless fool Miles Lee treats her like a precious treasure, holding her in the palm of his hand. Kate didn't let me see Miles Lee, so I came back. I only told Miles Lee's parents that he was keeping vigil for the cow. Miles Lee still hadn't returned by the time we finished eating. Putting down my chopsticks, I volunteered to bring dinner to Miles Lee. Mrs. Lee was overjoyed and kept praising me in front of my parents. Iris Lynn is so considerate. From now on, that rascal Miles will be under Iris Lynn's discipline. I smile. I leave with the lunchbox, making sure to call the little yellow dog from home to come along. My parents and the Lee family parents sit together drinking tea, discussing this year's production team's harvest, waiting for me to return. When I arrive at the brigade headquarters, I first go to the cattle pen. The cow was lying on the ground, the calf's head already visible, but there was no sign of Miles Lee. I tiptoed to the duty room of the brigade headquarters, signaling to Xiao Huang not to make a sound. A series of grunting sounds came from the duty room. Kate, when are you going to say yes to my proposal? I can't wait any longer. Don't rush. You're still engaged to Iris Lynn. Wait until I graduate from university. Getting married won't be too late then. Miles Lee panted heavily. Keeping things secret like this isn't sustainable. I want to be with you openly and honestly. Kate cooed back at him. Good brother. A wife is not as good as a concubine, and a concubine is not as good as a stolen affair. How thrilling this is for us. It goes without saying what the shameless couple was up to. I entered the kitchen, stuffed straw into the stove to light it, then pulled it out and threw it into the firewood pile. I quietly instructed Xiao Huang to hurry home and call for help. Little Huang understood my words, turned around, and ran straight home. The fire in the kitchen suddenly flared up. I deliberately threw a burning bundle of straw in front of the duty room door, blocking the escape route of that despicable couple. Then he shouted loudly, "Fire! Help put out the fire, soon." The little yellow dog brought my parents and the Lee family's parents rushing over, along with many villagers from the neighborhood. Miles Lee and Kate were trapped inside the house, screaming in agony from the thick smoke. Help! Help! The sound of everyone's footsteps grew closer, and I collapsed to the ground, unconscious. My mother cried out, "Quick, save Iris Lynn. She's passed out from the fever." Someone pinched my philtrum to revive me. It hurts so much, I can't keep pretending anymore, and have to slowly open my eyes. Upon waking, I heard someone say, "Thanks to Iris Lynn. Otherwise, not only would the house have burned down, but the people inside would have burned to death too. Given the current situation, it would have been better if those two had burned to death. How shameful." Iris Lynn, wake up quickly. We're waiting for you to save someone. I struggled to open my eyes. Mother Lee rushed over and helped me sit up while holding me. "Iris Lynn, get up quickly. Miles is waiting for you to save his life." I was forcibly supported by everyone and led into another room. Miles Lee and Kate were stacked on top of each other like a human pyramid, their bodies never separating. The room was still crowded with many people, most of whom were just there to watch the spectacle. Iris Lynn, look at what's going on. They can't separate. Mother Lee spoke while wiping away tears. What sin have I committed to be caught up in such a disgraceful affair? Seeing their shameful behavior clearly, I burst into loud sobs and lunged at Miles Lee to hit him. You scoundrel, how could you betray me? We're supposed to set our wedding date tonight, and instead of coming home, you're here fooling around with this tramp. I can't go on living. I started pounding Miles Lee's head with all my might. I also took the opportunity to scratch Kate Yu's face and chest a few times. Everyone urged me to calm down. Iris Lynn, we can talk about other things later. Saving lives comes first. I wiped away my tears sorrowfully and said with a sob, this is a case of sudden mania, very difficult to treat. Even if cured, it would cost at least 800 to 1,000 yuan. Otherwise, you should go to the county hospital. I won't go. Miles Lee's face turned purple red like liver. He said in a muffled voice, Mom, give her the money, let her treat me, as long as she can separate me from Kate Yu. Kate Yu tightly shut her eyes, pretending to be dead. She thought that if she couldn't see others, they wouldn't be able to see her either. 800 yuan per person. I made an exorbitant demand. To be blunt, payment upfront. Now, Lee's parents were both anxious and angry, with an added sense of shame. Whatever conditions I proposed, they agreed to them all. Their own family's money wasn't enough, so Lee's father went out to borrow from others. After borrowing from many people, they finally managed to gather 1,600 yuan. The two were squirming together like maggots, and after everyone had had their fill of watching, I began my performance. I put on gloves and pressed various acupressure points on their bodies. They howled in pain like ghosts and wolves. After working on them for about half an hour, finally, the two separated. I wiped away my tears again. Aunt Lee, with Miles Lee like this, our marriage is definitely not going to happen. He and Kate Yu love each other so much. I should let them be together. The villagers also chimed in one after another. Yes, Miles Lee didn't handle this matter properly. The Lee family is indeed in the wrong. Iris Lynn is a good girl. She absolutely cannot marry Miles Lee now. The Lee parents were scolded until their faces turned red with shame. Old man Lee's lips trembled with anger as he said, our Lee family was at fault first, so we won't ask for the betrothal gifts given to Iris Lynn. Back then, when we got engaged, the Lee family gave me 200 yuan and a 28-inch bicycle. Even if they asked, I wouldn't give it back. Since they didn't ask, they still have some conscience left. Just like that, my marriage with Miles Lee fell through. With 1,600 yuan in hand, I went to the city's pedestrian street and bought a few bungalows, waiting for the reform and opening up policy to take effect. So they could be demolished and rebuilt into apartments. I wanted my parents to become landlords collecting rent. I took Miles Lee for a huge sum of money, which gave me some satisfaction. Miles Lee and Kate Yu are openly together now. In public, they're always clinging to each other, all lovey-dovey. The villagers can't stop gossiping about them. Miles Lee even deliberately flaunted in front of me, boasting that he had married a college-educated wife. He mocked me, saying, you're just a barefoot country doctor. You'll never compare to my wife. I looked at him with amusement. Wait until she becomes your wife before you start showing off. After the incident of sudden death during intercourse, the Lee parents felt ashamed and would walk with their heads down, avoiding people when they went out. Miles Lee was not ashamed but rather proud of it. He urged his parents to propose to Kate Yu. Kate Yu wouldn't budge, saying they should wait until after college. The Lee parents thought Kate Yu had poor character and didn't want such a daughter-in-law. They made excuses, saying they'd accumulated many debts while treating their illnesses and needed time to recover financially first. Miles Lee argued with Kate Yu over the engagement and fought with his parents about it. The commotion was so intense it sent chickens flying and dogs jumping, causing daily unrest. Kate Yu went off to college. During the summer break, she returned to her own home. Miles Lee sensed the crisis and personally went to the Yu household to bring Kate Yu back. Kate Yu, now a college student, is a completely different person from when she was in the countryside. She would cover her nose at the sight of cow dung on the roadside, looking disgusted, complaining about the poor rural environment and the overwhelming stench. When she sees farmers carrying hoes, she scorns their rustic appearance, saying they reek of sweat. She seems to have completely forgotten the years she once spent in the countryside. During the summer, Kate Yu secretly took Miles Lee to the hospital for an abortion. Discovered by Miles Lee's mother, a family war finally erupted. Miles Lee slapped Kate Yu hard, yelling at her, "You said you wanted to go to college. So I stole Iris Lynn's spot for you. I paid for your college expenses with my family's money. How dare you abort the bloodline of our Lee family? Are you even human?" Kate Yu also showed her true colors, crying as she replied, "Don't you see, we're from different worlds and have nothing in common. Miles Lee, let's break up." Miles Lee was so angry that his hair stood on end. "Want to break up? Not unless I die. Give me back my university spot, spend my money, and pay me back with interest." Miles Lee grew angrier as he spoke, grabbing Kate Yu by the hair and demanding, "Tell me, have you changed your heart? Did you find someone else at university?" Kate Yu screamed in pain. "Miles Lee, you're as rude as a donkey. What girl would ever like you? This is domestic violence. Do you realize that, if you're not gentle with me, I'll break up with you, use me, and then try to break up? You don't get to decide that." Miles Lee felt a surge of anger, as if he had been deceived. "I'll report you to the school. Getting pregnant before marriage and having an abortion. You even stole Iris Lynn's chance to study. After my rebirth, I let my husband be with that pretty educated youth. And now I'll make sure the school expels you." The two of them wrestled fiercely, their hair disheveled and their heads bleeding from the fight. Kate Yu, worried that Miles Lee would actually report her to the school, had no choice but to admit her mistake and apologize. The two of them reconciled as if nothing had happened. I couldn't help but laugh heartily when I heard this from the neighbors. In his previous life, Miles Lee had always been fond of Kate Yu. But he didn't realize that Kate Yu didn't feel the same way about him. From beginning to end, Kate Yu was just using him as a stepping stone. Later, Miles Lee became the director, wealthy and powerful. Kate Yu was despised by her in-laws and had nowhere to turn, which is why she reappeared before Miles Lee. Miles Lee had always regarded Kate Yu as the unattainable love of his life, the one he longed for but could never have. He bought a house for Kate Yu, behind my back. And the two of them became involved. I was the legal wife, yet the last to know about their affair. In this lifetime, Kate Yu became a college student, while Miles Lee was just a rural veterinarian. Their social statuses were worlds apart. Kate Yu left the countryside and looked down on Miles Lee even more. Miles Lee, unfortunately, has a love-struck brain, being the only one passionately invested in this one-sided affair. In this lifetime, watching them fight like dogs, tearing at each other's fur, has cleared all my pent-up frustrations. The matter isn't over yet. I'll keep fanning the flames, watching Miles Lee end up with neither the hen nor the egg, a complete lose-lose situation. In 1977, the National College Entrance Examination was reinstated. Upon hearing the news, aspiring young people rushed to sign up. Miles Lee also registered. He wanted to get into Kate Yu's university so they could be together like lovebirds. After breaking off the engagement with Miles Lee, the relationship between our two families became awkward. When I went to the brigade to get a recommendation letter for the exam, Miles Lee's uncle deliberately made things difficult for me. I knew this day would come sooner or later after the engagement was called off. The two blank recommendation letters Miles Lee had given me before finally came in handy. The college entrance exam results were released. I was admitted to the clinical medicine program at Peking University with the highest score in the entire county. Miles Lee, however, failed to make the cut. On the day the results were announced, the county's education bureau came to my house with drums and gongs to deliver the good news. At this moment, Miles Lee finally realized that I had also applied for the exam. He deliberately rushed to my house to press for answers. "Since I didn't ask my uncle to write you a recommendation letter, how did you manage to apply? None of your business." I swung a broom at Miles Lee. "Get out. Neither dogs nor you are welcome in my house." Miles Lee shouted while running. "Iris Lynn, you cut corners and cheated. I'm going to report you to the Education Bureau." I picked up stones and threw them at him. "If you don't report me, you're a coward and your whole family will die." Miles Lee made a big fuss about the matter, prompting the Education Bureau to intervene and investigate. The staff went directly to the commune and retrieved my letter of introduction layer by layer. When the letter of introduction was placed in front of Miles Lee, he completely shut his mouth. During the winter vacation, I went back home, according to my parents. Miles Lee quit his job as a veterinarian and went to stay near Ketu, renting a place near the university. He wanted to study and take the exam again next year. However, Ketu avoided him. The Lee family parents were so angry they fell ill, personally went after him, and brought Miles Lee back. On my way home, I encountered Miles Lee's parents in the village. As if nothing had happened, I sweetly greeted them as uncle and auntie as usual, seeing that I didn't act differently toward them. Miles Lee's parents were moved to tears. Within 2 days, they sent matchmaker Auntie Lee to my home again, hoping to persuade me to reconcile with Miles Lee. My parents flatly refused. Miles Lee came to me and apologized. As he spoke, he kept slapping his own face. "Iris Lynn, I'm sorry, I was an idiot. I failed to recognize true worth. I was deceived by that bitch Ketu. You won't look down on me, will you?" He wept bitterly, his expression sincere. I felt nauseated listening to him, but still had to put on a face of sympathy. I choose men not by their status or position, but mainly by their character. Your current status doesn't match Ketu. She must have found a better guy at school than you, but if you study hard and manage to get into her school next year, you too can rekindle your past connection. I wish you a happy union for 100 years. I genuinely want to bring them together, to fulfill Miles Lee's wish from his past life. I'd rather see what kind of ending they'll have when they get together. But after being brainwashed by his parents, Miles Lee still thinks I'm better. He wants to rekindle the old flame. I definitely won't let him have his way. Miles Lee caught the underlying meaning in my words and reacted like a cat with its fur standing on end. I knew it. That bitch Kate, you must be seeing someone else. Iris Lynn, don't worry, I'll definitely cut all ties with her. How dare she cheat on me? I won't let her off easy. I smiled. In the previous life, when he cheated on me, I wonder if he ever considered my feelings. Now, it's Ketu's turn to cheat on him, and he can't handle it. In the previous life, Ketu also cheated on him quite a bit. He just didn't know about it. Ketu, relying on her good looks, was accustomed to using her charm to achieve her goals. She died a few days before Miles Lee. Her death was also disgraceful. Through Miles Lee, she became acquainted with a city official. To get some money from the leader, she fooled around with him. After all, she was older, and during their affair, she died of sudden death in bed. Miles Lee was on a business trip those days, and he didn't know the exact cause of Ketu's death. That day, I was on duty at the hospital. For the sake of the leader's reputation, the news was suppressed while still at the hospital. In this life, when I discovered Miles Lee and Ketu in a compromising situation in the duty room of the brigade, I deliberately set the kitchen on fire to startle them. Causing a sudden death during intercourse was also inspired by events from my past life. I gave them more words of advice and encouraged Miles Lee to keep striving, assuring them that they would eventually become a couple. After my instigation, Miles Lee became even more convinced that Ketu was secretly seeing another man. Not long after the school term started, something happened in the Lee family. Ketu was violated at school. She lost a lot of blood and her ability to bear children. After being discharged from the hospital, she dropped out of school. This time, Ketu took the initiative to return to the Lee family, wanting to marry Miles Lee. Miles Lee firmly refused. Ketu then found a hemp rope and hung it from the Lee family's roof beam. If Miles Lee didn't agree, she would hang herself. She even shouted loudly, "I am your Lee family's daughter-in-law." During the sudden illness, everyone saw me with Miles Lee. The villagers can all testify. "Miles Lee, when you were having fun, you praised me left and right. Now that I'm being bullied, are you trying to weasel out of it?" With that, she proceeded to put her head through the noose. Every villain meets his match. Fearing a loss of life, the Lee family had no choice but to agree. Not engaged, not registered, not even a wedding banquet. The two simply moved in together with 2 quilts. Ketu's health deteriorated, and Miles Lee lost his job as a veterinarian. Now, the Lee family's only income comes from the work points earned in the production team. Even after saving work points for a year, they barely make any money, not enough to cover Ketu's medication. When I went home on vacation again, I was stopped by Miles Lee, just as he was about to speak to me. Ketu came running out. She grabbed Miles Lee and warned me, "Iris Lynn, stop flirting with my Miles. He's my man now." I frowned in disgust. "Don't worry, I'm not interested in things others have used." Ketu spat at me in contempt. Sour grapes. With that, she pulled Miles Lee along and left. I shouted at her retreating figure, You'd better tie Miles Lee to your belt, or he might climb onto another woman. The next day, before dawn, Miles Lee came over carrying an old hen. He looked at me cautiously. Iris Lynn, this is for you. You've been studying too hard. This is to nourish your body. I threw the hen back and warned him. If you come again, I'll tell Kate you. That shrew won't let you off easy. If you don't tell and I don't tell, she won't find out. Miles Lee leaned in and shoved the hen into my hands. Iris Lynn, this hen has been raised at my home for 3 years, laying eggs all along. It was only slaughtered to nourish you. I'm sincerely apologizing to you. I flung the hen at his face. Unwarranted kindness hides treachery. Get lost. Miles Lee wiped the blood from his face in disarray, brimming with confidence. Iris Lynn, I will win you over. That night, Miles Lee sneaked over again to state his purpose. Iris Lynn, Kate you, and I didn't get a marriage certificate. I've been waiting for you. You're about to graduate. I'll save up for a few more years. When you graduate, we'll buy a house in the city. My parents have agreed too. He pulled out a bottle of malted milk powder and presented it to me like a treasure. Here, I know you have a sweet tooth, so I bought this especially for you, Miles Lee. Do you think I'm a garbage dump? It was the first time I'd met someone so shameless. I was so angry my blood pressure spiked. Miles Lee, I despise you. You saw how beautiful Kate you is and just hooked up with her. Kate you was in college, and you were chasing after her like a dog. Now that she's been wronged, you start looking down on her. You're not even human. You're worse than an animal. After I scolded him, Miles Lee slunk away in shame. Not 2 days later, he came to my house again. He bought me a pair of red gloves, the most fashionable style at the time. In my previous life, Miles Lee also gave me a pair of red gloves. He said he felt sorry for me getting up early and staying up late to see patients, afraid my hands would get cold. At that time, I was so happy that my eyes turned red. Later, I happened to meet Kate Yu. She was wearing a red georgette dress, bragging to everyone that Miles Lee had bought it for her. Kate Yu mocked me, saying the gloves I wore were ones she didn't want. That's when I realized the red gloves I wore were just a free gift with the dress purchase. Kate Yu picked through and didn't want it, so Miles Lee gave it to me as a favor. And yet I was so moved I cried. How foolish I was. I threw everything Miles Lee gave me outside the courtyard. He still came to report every day with unflagging enthusiasm. It wasn't until I started school again that he finally stopped. Soon, I was about to graduate. The school encouraged us to support the construction in border regions, and I signed up for it. I was assigned to a military hospital on the frontier. My parents also supported my decision. The spring breeze of reform and opening up swept across the motherland. Our family's living conditions are getting better and better. The bungalow my dad bought on the city's pedestrian street has started being demolished for redevelopment. He plans to form his own construction team to participate in the redevelopment project. The last holiday before graduation, I met Miles Lee when I went back home. His hair had turned white, and his spirits had withered away. A man barely in his 20s, hunched over like someone terminally ill. According to my mother, his relationship with Kate Yu was growing increasingly strained. Arguments were trivial. They frequently escalated into physical fights. Kate Yu is lazy and gluttonous, throwing a tantrum if she goes a day without meat. To get meat, she actually got involved with her uncle-in-law, which was discovered by Miles Lee, all because Uncle Miles Lee was the village party secretary and could obtain meat ration coupons. Once again, the Lee family became the laughingstock of the village's gossip. Miles Lee, after experiencing these distressing events, participated in the reservoir digging activity organized by the commune. Distracted, he was hit on the head by a falling rock. When he woke up, his hair had turned white overnight. My mother felt somewhat sorry for him. I think he brought it upon himself. I went up the mountain with my mother to gather firewood, while Miles Lee was weeding the fields. When he saw me, after a brief moment of surprise, his eyes lit up with the joy of reunion after a long separation. I gave him a cold glance. He woke with a start, swiftly turning his back to me. My mother scolded me. You child, we're neighbors. We see each other all the time. What's the harm in greeting him first? I sneered at Miles Lee's retreating figure. He wanted to be united in marriage with Kate Yu, and I helped him fulfill his wish. 1 lifetime was regret. 2 lifetimes fulfilled the wish. May they be entangled for 3 lives and 3 generations. My mother didn't catch the hidden meaning in my words, but Miles Lee's body froze in place. Early the next morning, I went outside the courtyard to dispose of the stove ashes. Miles Lee crouched at my doorstep, hugging his shoulders, with a layer of frost on his hair. I don't know how long he had been squatting there. When he saw me, he quickly stood up. He rose too hastily and stumbled, falling flat on his face. I poured the stove ashes into the ash pit, and he stopped me. Iris Lynn, you. He hesitated for a moment before saying, I want to say sorry to you. I snorted coldly. A single I'm sorry cannot make up for the harm and betrayal he inflicted on me in my past life. The Lee family's wealth and prosperity were all brought by Miles Lee, and Miles Lee's rise to success was all thanks to me. I didn't even want to look at him and turned to leave. Iris Lynn, if there's a next life, would you still be willing to marry me? I stopped in my tracks and turned to ask him, do you think I'm that cheap? At that moment, Miles Lee burst into tears. Iris Lynn, I'm sorry, you're the one I've wronged the most. I sincerely apologize to you. If there's a next life, I want to make it up to you. I'm not human, blinded by beauty. I betrayed you and broke your heart. I stared at him intently, seeming to notice my confusion. He stammered, after I got injured last time, I had a dream where you helped me become the bureau chief, but I betrayed you. I let out a long sigh. So he had also been reborn. His apology came too late. I wouldn't be waiting for him where I stood. These days after waking up, I finally realized that the reason Kate, you and I have come to this point is all because of your deliberate pushing and careful planning, but I don't blame you. I deserve all of this. Without you, Kate, you and I wouldn't have been happy anyway. I laughed coldly. If there's a next life, try to be a good person. At the end of summer vacation, I left my hometown to support construction in the border regions. Less than half a month later, my mother wrote to tell me that Miles Lee and Kate, you had both been imprisoned. Miles Lee had a crisis of conscience and turned himself in. He said he wanted to be a good person. He voluntarily confessed that years ago. He had bribed local thugs to humiliate Kate, you, causing her to become infertile for life and drop out of school. After learning the truth, Kate, you took an axe and chopped off one of Miles Lee's arms. In the previous life, Miles Lee begged me to have them buried together, hoping to secure a marital bond with Kate, you in their next life. I made it happen. In the end, it was they who drifted apart. However, everything about them is no longer my concern. I have more important things to do. I will dedicate my youth to the construction of my motherland.